For Cleveland fans, the season opener was supposed to feel different. The offseason hype had been building, the roster looked deeper, and on paper, this was a game they could win. Instead, it turned into another painful chapter in a long book of frustration. A 17-16 loss that showed just how fast hope can slip away in the NFL. It wasn't the defense's fault. If anything, the unit carried the team, throwing Joe Burrow and the entire Bengals. Offense off balance all afternoon. Myles Garrett looked like a one-man wrecking crew, blowing through blocks and wreaking havoc. When your defense holds one of the league's most dangerous duos, Burrow and Jamar Chase, to modest numbers, you should be walking away with a victory. But offense is where things unraveled. Joe Flacco, a Super Bowl MVP from a decade ago, was asked to do too much. 45 pass attempts at 40 years old is a recipe for disaster. And the stat line proved it. Nearly 300 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions that swung the game. Fans debated whether the picks were on the receivers or on Flacco himself. But in football, those turnovers stick to the quarterback's name. And in a one-point game, every single mistake carried weight. Special teams didn't help either. 2 missed field goals and a botched extra point left points on the table that the Browns simply couldn't afford to lose. In the end, those errors became the difference between celebration and heartbreak. The loss itself was bad enough, but what made it sting even more was the feeling that Cleveland once again failed to seize the moment when everything was lined up for them. Fans walked out shaking their heads, saying the same thing they've said for years. This team just gets in its own way. And while the starters carried the blame, a certain backup quarterback, quietly waiting his turn, was about to take the spotlight in a completely different way. When the Browns drafted 2 rookie quarterbacks, Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, most people assumed it was about building for the future, not the present. Gabriel had flashes in preseason. Shedeur looked steady but unspectacular, and neither was expected to see meaningful snaps early, especially not with the staff clinging to veterans like Joe Flacco to bridge the gap. Heading into the opener, the role for Shedeur couldn't have been clearer. He wasn't QB1. He wasn't QB2. He was technically the emergency quarterback. In NFL terms, that means break glass only if everything else goes wrong. Short of 2 guys going down in flames, Sanders wasn't supposed to have any impact on that game at all. And yet, that's not how things turned out. Because while Flacco was on the field turning the ball over, and Gabriel remained in the shadows, the guy who supposedly had no part to play managed to steal the narrative from both of them. It's ironic, in a one-point game where Cleveland desperately needed leadership and composure, those qualities came from the guy without a helmet in his hand. That's what made Shedeur's moment resonate so much. Fans didn't need to see him throw. They saw him in a different light, staying locked in, watching his teammates closely, and stepping into a leadership space that wasn't even his to own. Coaches hadn't drawn up a single play for him, but when the heat came down, he turned into the calmest presence on the sideline. For a rookie expectant to wait his turn, Sanders proved that impact isn't only measured in yards or touchdowns. Sometimes it shows up in the moments everyone else overlooks, until the cameras catch it. And that was the spark that would flip the entire conversation in Cleveland. On paper, Joe Flacco's stat line didn't look terrible. 45 throws, 31 completions, nearly 300 yards, and even a touchdown. For an aging quarterback, those are respectable numbers. But tucked inside were the 2 interceptions that absolutely crushed the Browns' chances. And those aren't just meaningless turnovers. They came at pivotal moments, erasing golden opportunities to take control of the game. In football, the numbers don't always tell the truth. Situational mistakes do. Fans debated it immediately. Was it the receiver's fault? Was the route off? In the end, excuses don't matter much. The ball left Flacco's hand. The other team caught it, and it went into the record under his name. That's the part that fans can't ignore. Because year after year, Cleveland has leaned on veteran quarterbacks to keep things steady, only to find that crucial errors still sink them in the smallest windows of opportunity. Now, compare that with Shedeur's limited but telling preseason performance. He didn't throw for 400 yards or put on a highlight reel, but what stood out was the absence of mistakes. He got sacked, sure, he took hits, but he protected the football, stayed poised, and showed he could manage drives without unraveling. Against Carolina, he threw for 138 yards, tossed 2 touchdowns, and most importantly, kept the stat sheet. It's not flashy, but it's reliable, and reliability is exactly what this team has lacked. For fans burned by years of costly errors in crunch time, the idea of a young quarterback who protects possessions feels like fresh air. So while the box score screams Flacco carried the load, the truth underneath tells a different story, one that has people asking, how much longer until protecting the future becomes more important than protecting the veteran ego? Football games are remembered for big plays, the 60-yard passes, the highlight sacks, the game-winning kicks. But sometimes what lingers comes from the small, blink-and-you'll-miss-it gestures. For Cleveland's opener, that's exactly what happened. After Andre Smith missed what could have been the game-winning kick, the energy in the stadium collapsed. Fans groaned, team shoulders slumped, drowning in the weight of a franchise's disappointment. Misses like that don't just sting, they isolate. In the brutal culture of the NFL, kickers are often left on an island when things go south. And then came Shedeur Sanders. He wasn't in uniform, he wasn't preparing to take snaps, but he saw something no one else addressed. Walking calmly over, shades on, demeanor steady, he put a hand on Smith's shoulder and offered a few quiet words. It wasn't grand, it wasn't rehearsed, it was human. In an environment built on ego and highlight reels, his choice to step into a teammate's lowest moment spoke louder than any touchdown throw could have. The cameras caught it, the clip hit social media, and from there, it exploded. They were talking about leadership. They were calling Sanders the kind of quarterback who supports his team, whether he's on the field or the sideline. Analysts started to notice the poise. Comment sections filled with praise, and new storylines started forming. Maybe the Browns' future arrived sooner than expected. The reality? A gesture that small shouldn't make headlines. But when a team is starving for a leader who lifts everyone around him, even the quietest moment can steal the show. When the clip of Shedeur consoling the kicker hit social media, it took on a life of its own. What seemed like a simple sideline moment suddenly turned into the story everyone wanted to talk about. And if you scrolled through the comments, one theme was clear. People weren't just noticing what he did, they were declaring what it meant. Some fans called it proof of natural leadership. Others pointed back to Colorado, remembering how Shedeur kept his college teammates steady in tough losses. Same guy, same leader, one comment read. And then there were the bold predictions. Flacco's done. Sanders will be starting by mid-season. It wasn't just positivity. It was belief that this rookie, supposedly stashed away as an emergency option, had the traits veterans hadn't shown in years. Of course, not all the chatter was about intangibles. A wave of fans pointed to the Browns' issues under center and argued that Shedeur couldn't possibly do worse than what they'd just witnessed. Clean preseason, no turnovers, calm under pressure, they wrote. What are we waiting for? In their eyes, the clip didn't just show good character, it showed readiness. As always, not everyone was focused on the real meaning. A handful of critics nitpicked his backward hat and sunglasses, as if supporting teammates somehow didn't count if you weren't dressed the right way. But most brushed it off, pointing out that leadership doesn't care about appearances, only actions. The bigger point was clear. In just a few seconds, Sanders had staked a claim to the hearts of Cleveland fans. This wasn't about one loss anymore. It was about the possibility of a future that fans desperately wanted. And sometimes, once the buzz starts, it's almost impossible to put it back in the box. Not everyone watching that viral clip focused on the leadership. Some people, as the internet always finds a way to do, zeroed in on his appearance. Instead of seeing a 22-year-old rookie showing maturity beyond his years, a small circle of critics dismissed it as if he wasn't taking the moment seriously. It's the kind of surface-level chatter that pops up in every sport. People love to equate the way a player looks with the way they supposedly lead. But the irony, of course, is that when you rewind the footage, Shedeur wasn't checked out or distracted. He was locked in, watching the game, supporting teammates, and when the kicker needed someone in his corner, he reacted instantly. That's called awareness, not apathy. Fans pushed back quickly. They pointed out that it was hot, the sun was literally in his eyes, and the role of an emergency quarterback doesn't exactly involve wandering the sideline in game face mode the whole time. More important, it's about what you do when someone else is at their lowest. Sanders passed that test with ease. What critics missed is exactly what veterans won't. Small, consistent acts of support matter in a locker room. Players gravitate toward people they trust, and when those veterans see a rookie step up without being asked, their respect for him grows quickly. So yes, the sunglasses sparked a silly debate, but the bigger picture erased the noise. If anything, the moment showed that Shedeur doesn't need to put on a performance to look the part. His actions speak clearly enough. For people just meeting Shedeur Sanders through this viral moment, it might have seemed like a surprising act of maturity. But for those who followed his journey, none of this is new. What Cleveland fans saw on the sideline that night is the exact same version of Shedeur. That at Colorado, he gained a reputation not just for his arm, but for his calm in chaos. Games where his offensive line broke down, he popped back up, regrouped, and moved on to the next play without panic. Losses that could have fractured a locker room, he steadied teammates, never throwing blame around, always choosing patience over noise. Coaches talked about it, teammates respected it, and fans noticed that rare combination. Talent paired with composure. That same attitude followed him to Cleveland. Think about his preseason. It wasn't fireworks and eye-popping highlights. It was steady execution. No turnovers. Poised decision-making. When pressure came, he didn't flinch. On paper, it looked quiet. In reality, that's exactly what coaches want from a quarterback they can trust. Someone who doesn't unravel when things get ugly. So when Shedeur crossed the sideline to console the kicker, it wasn't some out-of-character moment meant to grab attention. It was just another example of who he already is, a leader who shows up in the small, invisible ways. The difference this time? Cameras caught it. The world saw it. And Browns fans suddenly connected the dots. Maybe this rookie already embodies the presence the team has been missing. Leadership isn't something you invent overnight. It's a pattern. And for Shedeur Sanders, that pattern has been there all along. The Browns may call it just one game, but fans aren't buying it. A narrow loss like this, built on turnovers and missed chances, feels all too familiar in Cleveland. And when frustration builds, patience with the status quo evaporates fast. For now, the team insists Joe Flacco is the starter. He's the veteran, the steady hand. But one game in, that steady hand already slipped. Interceptions and missed opportunities fed into the same cycle fans have seen for years. Promise, panic, and another notch in the loss column. Dillon Gabriel is still waiting for a chance too, but the spotlight seems to be steering away from him. Shedeur, on the other hand, has something different on his side. Momentum, not because of jaw-dropping throws, but because of how he carries himself. The viral clip ignited more than just applause online. It hinted at a shift inside the locker room. Players notice who steps in when it's uncomfortable. Coaches notice which rookie doesn't have to be told how to lead. Those details matter when decisions pile up later in the season. No one's saying the Browns will hand him the keys tomorrow, but if Flacco falters again, or if the next loss feels just as preventable, the calls for change will only intensify. And the pressure won't just come from fans. It'll come from inside the building. Because once a player earns trust and respect this early, keeping him on the sidelines gets harder and harder to justify. What makes Shedeur Sanders' story from the game so fascinating is how little it relied on football itself. He didn't throw a pass, he didn't make a highlight reel play, and he didn't even touch the field. Yet somehow, he walked away as the storyline fans couldn't stop talking about. The Browns opener wasn't just a loss. It was another reminder of how fragile this team can be when mistakes pile up. A pair of interceptions, wasted opportunities, and missed kicks turned what should have been a winnable game into another heartbreak. On paper, all of that will be tied to veterans who already carry a long history of letdowns. But the moment that broke through had nothing to do with stats. It was Shedeur Sanders showing quiet, unshakable leadership when nobody else stepped in. And that's why it matters. In a league built on pressure, quarterbacks aren't only judged by what they do under the spotlight. The Browns can insist it's not his time yet. Coaches can lean on experience, but the truth is simple. When a rookie proves he already acts like the leader you desperately need, the countdown begins. The question isn't if Shedeur Sanders gets his shot. The question is how long Cleveland can wait.